Look, I'm just going to say what a lot of Blue Jays fans are already thinking right now. George Springer is 36 years old, he's in the final year of a massive contract, and this spring training update is either the best news we could have gotten, or it's the beginning of something we've all been quietly dreading. Let me explain why I think it's actually the former, and why Toronto fans should be genuinely excited heading into 2026. So here's where we are. Spring training is underway down in Florida. The Jays opened up their Grapefruit League schedule this past Saturday, and Springer has been in camp, he's been working, he's been doing everything you'd want to see from a veteran leader. But he hasn't played in a game yet, and for a lot of people, that immediately triggers some alarm bells, right? Because we all remember what happened last October. We all remember watching him gut through those injuries during the postseason, watching him play through obvious pain because that's just who George Springer is. He doesn't quit. He doesn't sit when his team needs him. But here's the update that came out Monday, and this is what actually matters. Sportsnet's Arden Zwelling reported that Springer's first Grapefruit League game is currently scheduled for this Thursday in Dunedin against the Marlins. And when I tell you that is exactly the news I needed to hear, I mean that. Because what this tells me is that the Blue Jays are being smart. They are being intentional. They are not rushing this man back just to get some early spring stats that mean absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things. Think about what Springer did last season for a second. Think about what that man actually produced. A .309 batting average, a .399 on-base percentage, a .959 OPS, 32 home runs, 84 RBIs, 140 games. And he did most of that as a designated hitter, which was a transition that, honestly, some people questioned when they first started leaning into it. People were asking whether Springer could still be an impact player if you took the outfield away from him, if you planted him in the lineup as a DH full-time. And he answered every single one of those questions in the most George Springer way possible. He had a career-high batting average at 36 years old. He won his third Silver Slugger. He finished 7th in American League MVP voting at 36 in what was supposed to be the twilight of his career. And then October happened. And I think that postseason run changed something for a lot of people when it comes to how they view this Blue Jays team. Toronto made it to Game 7 of the ALCS against the Seattle Mariners, and Springer hit a 3-run home run that sent the Blue Jays to the World Series. A 3-run blast in a Game 7. That's the kind of moment that defines careers, that gets replayed for decades, that gets talked about in the same breath as the greatest postseason moments in franchise history. And he did it while hurt. He did it playing through the kind of pain that would have benched most players weeks earlier. So when the Blue Jays come out this spring and say, we're going to ease George in, we're going to make sure he's right before we put him in game situations, that is not a red flag. That is exactly what you want from an organization that understands what they have and understands what's at stake. This is the final year of his 6-year, $150 million deal. This is his last ride in Toronto, at least under this contract. And everything about the way Springer has approached his career, the professionalism, the preparation, the ability to perform when it matters most, tells me he is treating this spring with the exact same intentionality the organization is showing in how they're handling him. Now, I want to talk about something that I think gets overlooked when people discuss Springer's value to this team, because too often the conversation starts and ends with the counting stats. And yeah, the counting stats are incredible, but there's another layer to this that matters just as much heading into 2026. George Springer is a former World Series MVP. He did that in Houston in 2017, and if you go back and watch that series, it wasn't just that he performed. It's how he performed. It's the pressure he absorbed. It's the way he seemed to get better as the games got bigger. That's not something you can manufacture. That's not something you can develop in the minor leagues or acquire through analytics. You either have it or you don't, and Springer has had it his entire career. 4 All-Star selections, 12 years in the big leagues, a reputation that every pitcher in baseball respects because they know that when the moment is biggest, when everything is on the line, George Springer is the last guy you want to face. That's the player the Blue Jays are building around in 2026, and that's why this spring training approach is so important to get right. The schedule has him going Thursday against the Marlins in Dunedin. Low pressure, familiar environment, a chance to knock off some rust and start getting those at-bats in a game setting without any unnecessary risk. Then you build from there. You monitor how the body responds. You keep the workload measured through the rest of March and make sure he's fully locked in by opening day. That is the blueprint, and from everything coming out of camp, that is exactly what Toronto is executing. What I keep coming back to is the bigger picture here. The Blue Jays genuinely believe this is a World Series caliber roster. This isn't a rebuild year. This isn't a year where you're playing for the future. This is a team that looked at what happened in October and said, we can win this thing. And a fully healthy George Springer is a massive part of that equation, not just because of what he does in the lineup, but because of what he represents in the clubhouse, because of the standard he sets, because of the way younger players on this roster watch how he prepares and follow his lead. The controlled approach to spring training is the organization protecting their most important veteran asset. It's the right call. And if Springer comes out Thursday, looks sharp against the Marlins, starts building that rhythm through the rest of Grapefruit League play, and arrives at opening day feeling healthy and confident, then every cautious decision made between now and then will have been worth it. This is the last contract year. This is the final chapter of the George Springer era in Toronto, at least as we know it. And if everything goes right, if the body holds up, if the team around him performs the way they're capable of performing, this could end with Springer hoisting a trophy for the second time in his career. And if that happens, if he goes out like that, then everything, every injury battle, every cautious spring training decision, every measured at-bat will have been exactly what it needed to be. Thursday in Dunedin, that's where it starts. And I genuinely cannot wait to watch what comes next.